Hello everybody, my name is Davis and welcome back to another video, and today we are here for another severe weather breakdown. Now today we're going to be talking about an ongoing severe weather outbreak that's going to bring the threat for significant damaging winds, large to very large hail, and even a few strong tornadoes to a certain section of the United States. In addition to that, this same system is also going to bring the threat for a winter storm to sections of the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. So let's go ahead and get right into it, starting off by taking a look at the storm predictions and our outlook for the next several days. Now starting off with today, we have an enhanced risk of severe weather now for sections of south central Oklahoma and extreme north central Texas. This is driven by a 10% chance of a tornado within 25 miles of any given point. We're mainly going to be talking about QLCS tornadoes embedded in a line of storms, which is why a hatched indicator has not been put in place for this event, because strong tornadoes are not really in the picture usually whenever we are talking about QLCS events. However, we definitely can't rule out a few across sections of southern Oklahoma especially. Now, the damaging wind threat for today is also going to be there. We've got a 30% chance of wind gusts of 60 miles an hour or higher within 25 miles of any given point across that same area. And we are going to have the threat for some large hail as well across sections of Oklahoma, southern Kansas, and portions of North Texas, potentially up to ping pong ball size. Now, as we move on to tomorrow, we have a large enhanced risk of severe weather across sections of Dixie Alley. And this is the day that we've been talking about for a while now, so listen up. As of right now, we do have over 7 million people included in that enhanced risk of severe weather. This goes all the way from sections of the Florida Panhandle back into southeastern Oklahoma, and it is driven by a 10% hatched tornado threat across sections of Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas there. This is the area where we think is going to have the greatest potential for a strong tornado threat. If we were to see a 15% hatched indicator get put in place, which I'm not saying is going to happen, and I don't think it's very likely, but if it were to happen, it would likely be somewhere across sections of western Mississippi and northeast Louisiana, so watch out in that region especially, but everywhere in this area in the yellow, brown, or even the green shade needs to be on the lookout. You'll also notice how that 2% shade goes back into sections of Kansas and Missouri. That is for a cold core tornado threat, where we could end up seeing a few brief land spouts or something like that back into sections of the Midwest. So damaging wind threat for tomorrow, we have a 30% hatched risk of damaging winds across sections of Dixie Alley, and it's looking like it's going to be one of those days where damaging winds end up being an even bigger story in the news than the tornadoes, right? We're going to be talking about that threat for damaging winds of 75 to 80 miles an hour across a wide swath of Mississippi, Louisiana, and even back into portions of Alabama. So if you are in this area, do make sure that you have multiple ways to receive alerts tomorrow, as significant tornadoes and extreme damaging winds look to be possibilities. Now, the hail threat for tomorrow is not quite as impressive, but it is still definitely in place there, especially for sections of the Midwest. I would not be surprised to see some hail maybe up to $half size. Now, moving on to Wednesday, we have a slight risk of severe weather for sections of the East Coast, but it is currently too early to break down the specific threats that brings. So let's go ahead and move on to what the models are showing for our severe weather outbreak over the next few days. Now, starting off with the NAM model here, we can see that it likes the idea of storms firing at about 9 p.m. across sections of Kansas and Oklahoma, and these will eventually evolve into our massive line of storms here. By midnight, we're going to be talking about the threat for damaging winds and hail across sections of eastern and central Kansas back down through central Oklahoma. And these will continue to push off to the east as the night goes on. By 3 a.m., I think our damaging wind threat kind of starts to increase here as this line starts to congeal into one big thing. However, the tornado threat likely will start to decrease at this point. However, a few QLCS tornadoes obviously cannot be ruled out. So by 5 a.m., the damaging wind and hail threat kind of peak here across sections of north central Texas and south central Oklahoma. And that really continues until about 9, 10 a.m. even in the morning hours of tomorrow. And this is the same exact line that's going to bring us our severe weather outbreak down into sections of Dixie Alley right now. This is noon tomorrow, okay? We're going to be talking about significant damaging winds being a possibility all the way from sections of Missouri back down through Texas. And again, our cold core tornado threat may produce a brief tornado or two into sections of central Missouri at this time. However, we can start to see some discrete supercells popping out ahead of the line of storms here in sections of Louisiana and southwestern Mississippi. And if this were to happen, that would promote a briefly strong tornado threat here across sections of Dixie. So if you are down here in this area, make sure that you are staying weather aware, and again, have multiple ways to receive alerts. By 1 p.m., it's a pretty similar situation, but things start to get really intense in terms of a tornado threat, I think, at around 3 p.m. We're going to be talking about discrete supercells all over sections of southern Mississippi, and if things do play out like this, we could be talking about situations where we have multiple strong tornadoes on the ground at the same time. So please, please, please do be on alert tomorrow if you are in this area in the afternoon time hours. Again, our cold core tornado threat continuing to develop there back into sections of Kansas and Missouri. It kind of peaks at around 3, 4 p.m., just like our tornado threat down in Dixie. Now, by 6 p.m., we're still going to be talking about isolated tornadoes across sections of eastern Mississippi, Alabama, and maybe even parts of southern Tennessee. But the main threat at this point is going to be damaging winds of 60 to 70 miles an hour across sections of southwest Tennessee as well as Mississippi here, and the line will continue to push off to the east as our supercells out ahead of it do the same, okay? By 8 p.m., we're going to be talking about some more of those cells over portions of Alabama, potentially producing some brief tornadoes, but I think more than likely we're mainly just going to be dealing with some wind and hail with those at this point. But again, maybe an isolated tornado or two possible, and then again, damaging winds continuing with our line there all the way back into sections of Appalachia. And then we get into Wednesday here. By 7 a.m. on Wednesday morning, our line kind of starts to die out, but we could still be talking about briefly damaging winds and maybe an isolated QLCS tornado anywhere from the Carolinas all the way back down through sections of the Florida Panhandle. And by noon, that threat really starts to die down quite a bit. And then by 4 or 5 p.m., we should be mostly done. However, you will notice the NAM model actually does like the idea of a few more discrete supercells popping up into sections of Virginia and West Virginia, as well as even Maryland. So we could be talking about a brief tornado in those areas if that were to happen. Now, the HRRR model is interesting because it shows a similar scenario for the most of this event, but not the exact same. For tonight, it likes the storms getting going about 10 or 11 p.m. and then really becoming quite intense as we get into the overnight hours once again. By 3 a.m., that's where that damaging wind threat kind of peaks once more, everywhere from sections of southern Kansas back through North Texas. And then again, if any of these little discrete supercells do appear ahead of our line here in the DFW Metroplex at around 6 a.m., we may have to watch out for a brief strong tornado threat in that region if that were to happen. Now again, our line will continue to push off to the east, but the interesting thing about the HRRR is that it likes the idea of discrete supercells out ahead of our line all day, and I think if this were to play out like this, we could be talking about a slightly more significant tornado threat than what the NAM is painting at the moment. Now, the really interesting thing here is that it doesn't show the line of damaging winds being anything too significant. Again, it's all about the tornadoes according to the HRRR model. By 2 p.m., we're still going to be dealing with that line already crossing the Mississippi River, bringing isolated tornadoes to sections of eastern Louisiana and western Mississippi. Again, you can also see our cold core tornado threat getting going back up there into sections of Kansas, Missouri, and even southeastern Nebraska briefly, potentially. By 4 p.m., we could still definitely be talking about some brief strong tornadoes across sections of eastern Mississippi and significant damaging winds across that portion of our line. But it kind of continues to push us off to the east here by 8 p.m. Again, this is going to be entirely an Alabama thing, most likely, and then it will continue to sweep off to the east, and by Wednesday morning, that line just kind of gradually dies out, and then eventually by the afternoon time hours, sweeps offshore there, but again, maybe another brief tornado or two possible somewhere in the mid-Atlantic region before that happens. So, as we mentioned in the intro of this video, this system is not only bringing us severe weather, but also the potential for a significant winter storm to sections of the Midwest. So, what is that all about? Well, if we take a look at things here, we can see on the backside of our low-pressure system, while those severe storms are getting going down in the deep south tonight, we're going to see a big old band of snow there develop across sections of northwest Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas, Minnesota even, and we actually do have blizzard warnings in place for those areas, right? So, again, significant damaging winds are going to be possible with this system here. So again, we're mainly going to be talking about localized regions getting up there, maybe a few inches of accumulation, but it's not going to be too significant of a system in terms of accumulation. One, because things are going to heat up significantly after this system moves through, so we're likely not going to be able to talk about, accumulating snow very well, and then also, this is moving quite quickly, so certain areas are only going to get snow for a couple of hours, and then they're going to be done, but while that snow is there, it certainly will pack a punch. Again, by the afternoon time hours of Wednesday here, that snow will be moving across sections of the Ohio River Valley, and eventually that'll make its way all the way back into Appalachia. Now, the NAM here likes the idea of anywhere from 6 to 9 inches of snow across sections of the upper Midwest there, anywhere from Iowa back through sections of Minnesota and Wisconsin, maybe a few inches of accumulation back into portions of Nebraska and South Dakota as well, where that line originates, and then maybe a good trace up to 1 or 2 inches of snow back through sections of the Ohio Valley, but again, nothing too intense. Now, looking back at our severe weather threat again, I was able to pull a very significant sounding here from the 18Z run of the HRRR model, and this is actually quite concerning. concerning because we can see here that we've got some significant parameters in place for a potential for strong tornadoes. If we take a look at things here, we can see that we're going to have over 500 SRH, which is far more than enough to fire off significant severe storms and strong tornadoes. We're going to have 67 knots of effective layer shear, and we're going to have 107 knots of shear up in the cloud layer, which is very significant. Again, the jet stream is really going to be carrying this event here. It's going to be quite crazy. 3 Cape values are going to be sitting at around 52, which is average. It's nothing too crazy, but there are certain spots that are going to get quite a bit over that, so keep that in mind. This sounding in particular was taken from sections of central Louisiana. We can see that we've got a significant drop-off in dew points higher up into the atmosphere, so that could potentially promote a briefly large hail threat across sections of Dixie Alley, but again, that possible hazard type there at tornado, I'm sure if I searched for longer, I could have found one with a PDS tornado tag. Again, we've seen several of those over the past few days across the HRRR, NAM, and GFS, so again, don't take that all in its entirety. Again, we likely could find a PDS tour sounding if we did just a little bit more research there. Our Storm Slinky turned at 66 degrees. That is a very impressive photograph there. It's very curved, showing a lot of instability. And then our effective layer STP in between a 3 and a 4. Again, some of my soundings have been closer to that 4 or 5 range. So, again, quite a significant, potent setup for this event here. So, finally, before we do end off this video, I would like to take a look at the watches, warnings, and advisories across the country at the moment, because I don't think that they have been this widespread for several months, potentially back whenever we were dealing with Winter Storm Blair here. If we take a look at things, we can see that we've got wind advisories in that light brown shade all the way from sections of Georgia back through areas in Oklahoma and Texas there. Those orange shaded boxes, those are our blizzard warnings that we were talking about. Again, this system is going to bring a significant threat for a winter storm, especially to sections of the Central Plains and the Midwest. So if you are in any of those boxes there, make sure that you are staying weather aware. Again, significant damaging winds are going to create very hazardous travel conditions, so please be very careful. We do have red flag warnings and high wind warnings in effect across much of Oklahoma and Texas because we are expecting a significant fire danger to be in place for those areas. So again, try to avoid burning if at all possible in those regions. We also do have a dust storm warning for portions of southeastern New Mexico right now, as that dust is all kicking up due to those damaging winds. But other than that, that's about all we have to talk about. So if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Again, make sure to turn on notifications so you do get notified whenever we go live every time for this event. We were live for over 2 hours yesterday covering severe weather, and the next few days look even crazier. So again, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Peace.